And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. We're brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. You know, you could be like Bob. He's 63. He has spent his last 40 years as a body man, a car painter. Needless to say, that put some wear and tear on the old chassis. Bob says, hey, I could barely walk, couldn't make it up the stairs. By day 4 or 5, though, on Relief Factor, I started feeling the change. And after just 8 days, I would say I was about 75% better. I'm comfortable now. I'm thoroughly impressed. Bob is just one of the many success stories from the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor. Over 1 million people have tried it. 70% of them had Bob's story in 3 weeks or less and stuck with the product long term. So why don't you see, if you don't see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com, especially when it costs you just $20 to find out with the 3-week quick start at relieffactor.com. And then a couple of quick housekeeping items here for you as well. Don't forget the latest edition of Frontier is available now if you join the next tier. See what I did there? A couple different tiers. Exactly. Yeah. I'm on it today, brother. I'm on fire. You can get your latest copy of Frontier if you go beyond just being a subscriber to the Blaze, but a partner with the blazeunlimited.com. That's more VIP treatment, more early access to exclusive events, more members-only content like Frontier Magazine. You'll also get access to the previous 3 issues you missed by signing up now. And use the code Frontier40 at blazeunlimited.com/Deace, and you'll get $40 off your Blaze Unlimited subscription. That's Frontier40 at blazeunlimited.com/Deace. Frontier40 is the promo code at blazeunlimited.com/Deace. And we're launching a new show here on the network on Friday. Very excited. All three of us are admirers of Chris Rufo. He is a doer of the word, not just a mere pontificator. It might be the most effective activist on our side alive on the planet currently. And he is doing a new show with Jonathan Lomez Keeperman. It's debuting this Friday. You don't want to miss it right here on Blaze TV, Rufo and Lomez. And you can get a preview at youtube.com/Rufo and Lomez. youtube.com/Rufo and Lomez. All right, coming up today on the program, we didn't have time with everything going on with the election results and more on Tuesday to do a Pop Culture Tuesday. So we're going to do one here today. Why is it so challenging to get conservative movies and faith-based movies more out there in the marketplace? Mark Joseph's got a lot of experience in this space, including the successful Reagan film last year. He's going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. And then next hour, Theology Thursday, we're going to conclude chapter 11 as Paul finishes the discourse on what the advent and the ascent of the Christian church means for the nation of Israel and the Jewish people. And we'll finish chapter 11. And I'm guessing, just spitball in here, but I'm guessing there might be a contemporary application or 28. There might be a few. There might be a few ways to apply that those scriptures to what we're talking about in the world today. So that's coming up next hour with Theology Thursday. But first, let's kick this thing off, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the economy.
Wages for workers are rising at the fastest pace in over 60 years. Those are workers, and that's what we love. We love the workers. Since I took office, wages for the typical factory worker are up $1,300. Construction workers' pay is up $2,200, and miners are up nearly $5,000 this year alone.
President Trump spoke to the America Business Forum yesterday, where he emphasized the economy is on better, or at least getting on better footing. He also highlighted drops in some food prices and other commodities, including a 25% drop, according to Walmart, in a Thanksgiving meal. Seems as if the White House is trying to navigate some hopefully temporary headwinds when it comes to the economy. According to polling from the Neapolitan News Service, just 26% of voters say their finances are getting better, and another 39% say they're getting worse. That's down sharply from 2 weeks ago when Neapolitan found 31% said their finances were getting better and 31% said they were getting worse. Voters, according to Neapolitan News Service, are now nearly as pessimistic about the economy as they were just before Donald Trump won the 2024 election. According to Forbes, fewer than 1 in 3 2025 college graduates have found a job in their field of study. According to the National Association of Realtors, the median age for a first-time homebuyer in the United States is now 40 years old. There is a lot of work to do on the economy, and Vice President J.D. Vance addressed some of these headwinds in a post on social media the other day, saying, quote, "We inherited a disaster from Joe Biden, and Rome wasn't built in a day. We're going to keep on working to make decent life affordable in this country, and that's the metric by which we'll ultimately be judged in 2026 and beyond." The Supreme Court heard arguments yesterday in a case that could put the kibosh on President Trump's use of tariffs as a negotiating tool for trade deals. Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett seemed very skeptical of the government's case in favor of the use of tariffs. We'll see where that story goes. In other news, the Federal Aviation Administration is reportedly set to decrease flight traffic at major airports across the country, citing safety risks from understaffing due to the government shutdown. Pretty much every major airport from sea to sea could see flights slashed in the coming days. News from our backyard at the University of Iowa, TPUSA had a table set up on campus to talk to students as they typically do. This individual came along and tore that table down. The individual is later identified as Justin Calhoun, who was arrested and charged with 2 counts of disorderly conduct, 5th-degree criminal mischief, and 2 counts of 3rd-degree harassment. Don't mess with Texas update.
So know this, that Islam will enter every house. Every house. Don't worry about the Islamophobes. They can yap all they want. Their children will be Muslim. All those people of Taif, go to Taif today. Show me a kafir there. All Muslims. Read Tariff, al-Thaqafi. Al-Thaqafi, this qabila is from Taif. Great mujahideen, great ulama, they came from the children of those that used to throw those stones. So Islam will enter every house.
That is Islamic evangelist Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk, a Pakistani-born Islamic propagandist who is reportedly moving to Texas. And finally, this from the Babylon Bee. Palestine protester tries to argue with skinhead, but they just agree on everything. That's what happened while we were away.
That from the Babylon Bee. Listen, I mean, I know one thing. I know at least one person in Texas who will be wishing a happy Eid and a blessed Eid Mubarak. So, Aaron's montage. You didn't think I was going to go there, did you?
I did.
I don't care.
Well, good.
As you saw yesterday,
I'm not complaining.
As you saw yesterday with the Brett Cooper thing, I'm out of cares. Really, I mean, I'm just completely and totally and irredeemably out of cares.
Endorsed.
All right.
What does Islam have to say about pumpkin spice? Anything?
It better not.
Oh, Aaron went there too. Wow.
Yeah.
It's getting real in here.
Yeah. Just remember, brother, it's the Steve Deace Show. All right. Not the Aaron McIntyre. Just saying. All right. All right. Aaron's montage brought to you by friends over at the Life or Death Con. That's Life or Death Convention. I'll be speaking there. You can join me in Washington, D.C. coming up on January 22nd of next year. That's 2026 for those of you that went to public school. I'll be sharing the stage with some of the most powerful voices in our movement, like our good friend Megan Basham, Seth Gruber, and more. If you care about truth, if you care about life, if you believe the battle is far from over, then you need to be there. So what are you waiting for? Get involved in the fight. Get in the fight. Get in the fight. Head to Life or Death Con, C-O-N, lifeordeathcon.com right now and reserve your spot. And don't forget to use the promo code Steve and you get at checkout and you'll get 20% off your ticket. So this is the moment to choose. Life or death. Choose ye this day. Charlie Kirk revival or reactionary retardation. Those are your choices. Lifeordeathcon.com and use the promo code Steve at checkout for 20% off your ticket. All right, let's talk economia, shall we? Because I think it's clear the president has come out guns blazing since Tuesday's election night and has made the decision. If you look at the polling there from Scott Rasmussen and you look at the messaging from Donald Trump, they are bifurcated. All right. And so it's clear that the president has decided. So we're going to discuss this from two angles, policy and messaging, but we're going to start with messaging first. It's clear the president has decided, and it's probably wasn't much of a decision for him. People, all of us have different perspectives and ways we communicate and ways we are comfortable communicating. This is not the "I feel your pain" president. This is not who that is, right? All right. This is a guy this is the ABC, always be closing president. This is Glenn Ross got elected to the White House, basically. All right. Which is ironic because the actor that gave that famous speech is known for detesting and hating Donald Trump. All right. But in many respects, this is the Glenn Ross presidency. We're always closing here. We're always selling. Okay. And so it's clear, and I am fascinated. I could see this go different ways. You know, this could be a Jason Bateman. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out. Could be that. It could be that one of the reasons those numbers are so bad is because Trump's deduction is correct. They have not messaged on the economy aggressively enough, and he can maybe move those numbers a little bit towards his favor. It could also be just a very basic choice, which is if you're Donald Trump, there's no point in having messaging that acknowledges what people are feeling at their own kitchen tables right now, because if you can't stop that, you're toast anyway. You see what I'm trying to say? So you might as well just go on offense, because if you turn out to be wrong, you're no matter what you said, you're done anyway. So you might as well just go on offense because you're up against your back's against the wall. So there's really, it's an easy strategy at that point. But regardless, it is very clear that the president has come out post Tuesday now for the last 36 hours, and he's going to message aggressively, contrary to what people are telling us that they think and how they feel. Thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Oh, I go back to what you said initially about Donald Trump, and everything beyond that was valuable nuance, but nuance nonetheless. You said, I think I'm quoting, I don't think it was really much of a choice for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. It's a baseline default setting for him.
This is his weather, and no one should be shocked.
I think President Trump is reading, forgive me if I'm stepping on, I know you're going to go there next, so I'm not going to say that, but I think he's reading several tea leaves here, especially when it comes to nuking the filibuster and realizing the time is short. Mm-hmm. Very, very short. Vice President J.D. Vance has been very consistent with the message that I shared, that he shared earlier this week about the mess that the Biden administration, and it's true, it's absolutely true, the Biden administration left a mess, but there is a recognition, I think, in the White House right now that when it comes to executive action, they're basically at the end of the line. When it comes to legislative action, the only chance that they have is by nuking the filibuster. Otherwise, they're basically impotent.
And they won't get anything passed that matters. Yeah. And hey, I am the one that's been pointing out all year long that Reagan had a horrible midterm election in 1982. He lost over 30 House seats. I think they lost more than a half dozen governor's races because people did not feel yet on a micro level, at a kitchen table level, did not feel the paradigm shift he was attempting to, implement with, the comprehensive tax cuts. And so he essentially inherited the Carter misery index recession that got him elected. He essentially inherited that, and Republicans got annihilated in the 82 midterm elections. And then by the end of 83, it was morning in America again. And by the time we get to the end of 1984, Reagan gets elected in what's probably going to be the last great landslide in American presidential election history, given how balkanized of a people we currently are.
Yeah, that's what's fundamentally different. We had a lot more moderates back then.
I know, I was just going to say that.
He won with Reagan Democrats who would be willing to go back if they didn't get they want. We don't live in that world.
I agreed. Anymore. I was literally just going to say that, so you read my mind. You finished my point for me. The problem with that strategy, and in fact, since you already went there, I won't repeat it, so let me add the second point that I was going to make onto that. These aren't 1984 Democrats. And if we lose this midterm election next year, impeachment begins the next day. And not just of him. RFK Jr., Jay Bhattacharya, Pete Hegseth, just pick the cabinet people and appointments you like the best. They're all under investigation the next day. Better lawyer up. Nothing will get done. Nothing will get passed. Much of the Trump presidency is over, especially on a domestic front, if we lose this midterm. So we're not dealing, while I understand the situational analogy, the circumstances of the people we're talking about here are not the same whatsoever. So the cost of this are very high, which brings me to the policy side of this that Aaron teased a minute ago, and that is the Supreme Court case. I think we need to all take a deep breath and realize that it is very possible, a long time, there's a lot of time, okay, between now, literally 360 some odd days, okay? So a lot can happen, a lot. But it is very possible. Remember, we're never going to have Donald Trump on the ballot again. We can't stress that point enough. We're never going to have him on the ballot again. Which means we're going to have all the blowback, and all great leaders are polarizing. Has there been a great leader in human history that's not polarizing? I mean, dude, the greatest leader who ever lived, people were intimidated by him in a manger, okay? There's no such thing as a great leader that's not polarizing. What's more polarizing than no one comes to the Father except through me? What's more polarizing than that? What's more polarizing than before Abraham what? Before Abraham, I am. What's more polarizing than that? Okay? So no great leader isn't polarizing. But in the case of Trump now, without him on the ballot anymore, while still being by far the dominant personality that we're all, interacting with, we get all the blowback from the other side and their disdain from him, but we are not getting the boost from our side in how people are willing to uniquely go out and vote for him and not really any other Republican at the moment. So, yes, lots of things will happen and occur, but the variables without Trump on the ballot aren't, the list of them, guys, is not as vast as if he were on the ballot. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And how he would specifically react to a situation or specifically capture a situation. Like I don't think a Trump interview on Joe Rogan saves a Senate seat in pick a state, because that guy's not on the ballot. And the guy who wasn't doing the interview is who's on the ballot, or gal. So I think it is very possible that we could look back 1 year from now and see the outcome of this Supreme Court case created a margin for error one way or the other that either helped us get to where we wanted to go in the midterms or made it harder. And here's why. We have an inflation problem. And while the inflation trend is down, the exorbitant inflation we suffered with all the printing of money and government spending because of the scamdemic and then thereafter has not been addressed in any meaningful way whatsoever. Healthcare is one of the largest industries in America. In fact, it is now the largest industry in America. And Obamacare, of course, has caused prices within healthcare to skyrocket to the point now that in a lot of places, you might be better off forsaking employment-based health insurance and going with a lesser Obamacare exchange plan from a pricing perspective. You might be better off sacrificing quality for pricing. And the Republicans punted on their chance to deal with this. So now they own it. They own Obamacare. Might as well be called Romney Care, Trump Care, Johnson Care, Cruz Care, Lee Care, Paul Care. They own it. They just own the thing, hook, line, and sinker. It's their thing now. So they wouldn't get because of how broad but shallow our coalition is. We're not a big tent, we're a big tarp. I haven't said this in several years, but we're really just a mishmash, goulash, hodgepodge of non-communists of various stripes who just don't want to live under a hammer and sickle. But really, fundamentally, cannot govern. They just, We just don't have a critical mass of us that want to make the same kinds of decisions on what to do instead. That's why we're a great opposition party traditionally and a terrible governing party traditionally. We're not a governable coalition. And so they didn't want to get rid of Obamacare for reasons. We're not going to significantly cut spending. All right, so exorbitant costs for healthcare and exorbitant cost of inflation from government spending on everything else, the number one drivers of why everybody feels the way they do about the economy. And so we're sitting on all Aaron pointed out, this is the average median age for a first-time home buyer, the oldest in American history, 41. And we're all sitting on these we're in this situation now, we're sitting in these massive piles of equity in these homes we cannot sell or move because no one can afford them. On top of that, the interest rates are still too high to go out and get some kind of HELOC or something else where you can at least cash in on it. So we're stymied here. We're stillborn economically in many cases on a micro level. So we need an intervention. We need a paradigm shift. And if the paradigm shift is not going to be, we're going to cut down on what we're spending. We're going to tighten our belts here and run a tighter ship. This Republican Party is not going to do that. And I think, frankly, even if it tried, I think a godless voting bloc would just lose their minds, to be honest with you, and just punish them. Even if we had the party we wanted to have, I think voters would just largely punish them.
If you weren't going to make that point, I was. Well done.
I mean, so we can blame the rhinos. You can blame the godless, the godlessness of the American people who believe they're entitled to things they're not. And whatever you want to call it, the answer is yes. So therefore, since tightening the belt is not on the table, that's just not an option. It's not viable. We can all want it, yell, scream, email me, call me, Ryan, sell out, whatever you want to do. Cool. But the reality is we have to live in the world that we actually have, not the one we want to have. And that's the world we're in, not the world of 1989 Grover Norquist white papers. We're in this world here in 2025.
Grover Norquist. Wow. Good pull.
I was trying to pull something from deep in the bowels to demonstrate just how antiquated that viewpoint was. Yes. Did it work?
It did.
Thank you. Good. All right. Did I sound old? Because I was trying to really sound old.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah. I was just trying to point out how just played out that entire notion is. So here we are. So then if we're not going to tighten the belt, that only leaves one option. We have to bring in more. We have to become wealthier then. Well, there's only a couple ways to do that. Make things more taxing, so to speak, on our own people, or make things more taxing, so to speak, on the other people. Now, I don't know what you know about politics, but running on, we're going to make you pay more and receive less from government isn't typically a winning message. I'm not sure how often you guys have been, how new some of you may be to this whole thing called democracy, but running on, we're going to take more from you and give you less doesn't typically win. It's not typically a message that, rallies the populace and makes them fall over broken glass on election day to come and vote for you.
It does not scream, "This is Sparta."
It does not. It's not much of a rallying cry. It's not. Okay. So then making the other people pay it is, right? All right. Now, here's the thing about the tariffs. The tariffs are not primarily meant to be a revenue generator. They're meant to be a leverage generator.
Bing.
Okay. They're meant to be a leverage generator. And they're meant to compel nations like China, India, Canada, others who are competing against us in the global marketplace, competing against us for manufacturing, space, competing against us for middle class standard of living, etc. It's meant to provide us a leverage point to get better deals from them, so we're getting more money back than we're sending out to the rest of the world. If the Supreme Court takes that off the table, and I think there is a very realistic chance that is going to happen, I think you have the libertarian judge and Gorsuch. This is anathema to his entire worldview. You have the Bush, wing judges and Roberts and Kavanaugh. This is anathema to their we're going to suspend free market principles to save the free market version of republicanism. I think we might be cooked there, frankly. I hope I'm wrong. Because if I am, I don't know what the next play is. I don't. And I talked to some people this morning before I came on the air who are smarter than me on this to, get their take on it. And one of the things that was suggested to me is at that point, maybe we use the military. And we say to these kinds of countries, tell you what, Japan, you guys are worried about China, all right, and their hegemony in the region. Yeah, we just don't have the money to pay for your protection anymore. So we're out. Go get them. Banzai! Go get them. You're on your own, okay? And we still have the Karate Kid movies, but that's just going to be a no. We can't afford it. Oh, wait. You think you guys need us as a barrier reef between you and the Chi-Coms? Well, here's the new going rate. Now, I will also say, though, that sounds great. And I must admit, I'm semi-attracted to this notion. It's also not a great way to base relationships with people in terms of strategic alliances if everything now becomes transactional constantly and there's really no shared values at all. But we may be there. I mean, I have no idea how many shared values I have with either side of the Ukraine-Russian war. I really don't. I don't know how many values. I know I don't share many values with Putin. I'm not sure what values at all I share with Zelensky. I don't know what values I share with Davos or Moscow. So maybe we are in an era now where just everything is transactional. If you guys want us to, be a military buffer between you and the Chi-Coms, then, here's what it costs. The United States military is like a private security force now. All right. So we're not just doing this stuff because of shared values. We're doing this for numerical values, so here's what it'll cost. But I think that does also demonstrate how much we're lacking in leverage points if this one is taken away. And it's because the other major leverage point, which is tighten our belts, just politically isn't a feasible one. So I think this case may have a lot to say about the environment we're in this time next year. What do you guys think real quick?
So if you want to know how bass-ackwards it will be if the Supreme Court decides that it's unconstitutional for Trump to be able to enact tariffs on foreign economies, I think it was Gorsuch who brought the line of questioning to the solicitor that was arguing the case in favor of the government's position. What happens in the future if a president declares a climate emergency and starts slapping tariffs on imported energy? That's a fair question. However, if the Supreme Court, and it could be a narrow ruling like the president can't enact reciprocal tariffs, they don't make sense, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. If it's a broad ruling, meaning the president of the United States, it's unconstitutional for him to enact tariffs as a use of leverage, here's what the ruling actually is. The ruling is from the Supreme Court, if it is broad, it's unconstitutional for the president to use tariffs. What they're saying is it is constitutional for a nameless, faceless, unelected bureaucrat or a set of them to enact tariffs, because here's what's going to happen. Those powers will be devolved to Congress. Congress will set up a Department of Redundant Tariffs Department. That department will be staffed by nameless, faceless, unelected bureaucrats. That's how it's going to work. Barack Obama used tariffs during his tenure to save American tire jobs. There has to be some sort of leverage point here for the president. But it seems like the Supreme Court, at least from what I saw yesterday, they don't seem to agree with the government's position.
Todd?
Yeah, I was going to make your point, Aaron, in a different way. It's going to the default conclusion that you can make if they overturn his use of tariffs is that the blue-haired trans teacher that is in Steve's last book that came out, that person has more legitimate constitutional autonomy to effect change within the confines of their own public school classroom than the President of the United States does to enact sound fiscal policy for the benefit of all Americans. That's what you're saying. That nameless, faceless government employee is more empowered than the president on negotiating economic trade deals with foreign nations. Those are the dots you must connect. It's just a level of self-hatred and self-loathing of the American people. And that's what I'll say about Gorsuch and the like if they rule in this fashion.
More in a moment. So I put our family trust level to the test. We're really trust level with my son to the test and my daughters. I got in the mail Tuesday. I got shipped to me the new essential open earbuds from Raycon. And I, on purpose, took them out of the shipment box. So they're in the box that has the Raycon logo on it. And I've left it on my desk. Just kind of dangling out there. Like a temptress. Just to see how long it'll take before my kids take these from me again. Because that has happened with virtually every other pair of Raycons I've received since we've been partnered with them for 2 or 3 years now. I mean, one of my kids just ganks them every single time. So I wonder if they can sense I'm testing them by just leaving them out there like this to see if they're going to get to them before I do. So far they're there, which surprises me because they've never lasted that long before. All right. So the new open earbuds from Raycon, they deliver crystal clear sound. They sit just outside your ear canal so that you can stay tuned to traffic and coworkers, whatever else is happening around you without losing out on music or podcast quality. They're lightweight, all day comfortable. They never feel bulky. And the secure fit means they stay put, I should say, whether you're at the gym, out on a walk, or grinding through your to-do list. So get the breathable fit that delivers comfort, safety, and immersive audio while keeping you aware. I'm going to let mine sit on the desk for another 24 hours. See if they survive. Then if they do, I'm going to give them a shot and come in and give you my review because I've been anxious to try.
This seems more like a game you're playing with yourself than with them, to be frank. But
no, it's a game with them. It's a game with them. It is. All right, so Black Friday is just around the corner. Raycon audio products are up to 30% off site-wide. From everyday essentials to the latest releases, it's the perfect time to upgrade your sound or get ahead on gifting. These early deals won't last long, so shop now before they're gone. Go to buyraycon.com/Steve open to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. That's buyraycon.com/Steve. Buyraycon.com/Steve. You'll save 30% off site-wide at buyraycon, RAYCON, buyraycon.com/Steve. Well, I know a lot of you agreed with me how much you loved the Reagan film last year. And I still remain bewildered why we are not doing more on our side to invest in the storytelling, content producing arena, especially now. I mean, Warner Brothers is looking for a buyer, and it's been the most successful studio so far this year. Disney had one flop in over 40 years. The Black Cauldron. They've had 6 between Marvel, Disney native, and Pixar. 6 in the last 3 years. 6 verifiable flops. The content industry is starving for good content. It would seem like now more than ever before, and we are doing better, don't get me wrong, we're doing better, but now more than ever before, we'd be investing aggressively into this arena to change hearts and minds. And one man that has been doing that for a long time joins us now, Mark Joseph. He's one of the producers of Reagan. He's got a book out about the making of the film, in fact, Making Reagan, a memoir from the producer of the Reagan movie, with a foreword by Megyn Kelly, and got a chance to meet Mark recently at a TPUSA event earlier this summer. And Mark and I have a lot of mutual friends now that I've made a movie myself because there's a very small club of people on our side that can do this well and can make films. So, Mark, it's good to have you on the show, man. How are you?
Hey, Steve. Good to be with you.
Let's just start there, Mark, on a meta level. Why has it been difficult? Charlie and I spoke together at a group of well-heeled Christians in Naples, Florida, in December of 2023, who were anxious of serious investing and getting involved in this space and making a real play. And it seems to me like the opening is even greater than it appeared to be a couple of years ago when Charlie and I did that event together. And yet, I just don't sense that still a lot of elements on our side understand the potential in storytelling to change hearts and minds. Am I wrong?
Steve, I think it's it would make for a fascinating sociological study of the right and the left. I just think that, I don't quite understand it, with the exception of maybe Reagan and Trump. The right seems to think if we can just amass all the facts, we can convince people of things. And yet, this is, in terms of the Christian part of it, Christianity is based upon a man who loved to tell stories to fishermen, right?
Right.
He didn't come in with facts and figures and polling data. He told stories, and that's why we love him. And that's what we grew up hearing. We grew up hearing stories. And I can't think of a better example of this than in the Old Testament when the prophet comes to David. And he could easily, have said, you have violated the X commandment, and here's your punishment. But he told a story, and he allowed King David to see the story detached from himself. And he said, that man must be put to death. And the prophet says, you are that man. That's the power of a story. King David had no time for defenses. He just saw clearly because he saw a story. And that's the power. But yeah, there's a phenomenon that if I understood, I would explain it to you. I can't understand it really. It's just the way the brains are wired of people on the right versus people on the left.
So, for example, I was having a conversation with somebody else in this world that has some prominence. I'll just put it that way. And we were having this conversation yesterday, and I gave this person a hypothetical. I said, hey, if we spent $10 million to make a very good movie based on an existing profitable franchise that's favorable to our worldview, could we bypass the entire Hollywood system? I mean, sites like The Blaze, Daily Wire, the Fox Nation, FoxNews.com have massive audiences, massive, amounts of unique users that profligate our sites every day. Otherwise, The Blaze wouldn't have bought me this, made me this posh studio here in Des Moines, Iowa to do this show for 2 hours every day. Okay. And so could we just bypass the system so we're not giving 45% of minimum of every dollar we make to theater owners before we ever see a dollar? Another 20, 30% to studios who hate our guts. And we just do this peer-to-peer. We make this with our own people. We distribute it on our own streaming. We stream it on our own platforms on these native, sites that have these huge audiences. And yeah, you're not going to get, Amazon, Apple level traction, but tens of millions of unique users come to these sites every single day. Could we get 1 million people to pay $20 to watch it PVOD on one of these sites, and we make 2 to 1? I was just throwing out round numbers as a hypothetical. You know what he told me? I don't think so.
What?
I don't think so. He goes, I know it's weird. He goes, and this is someone who works in the AI digital algorithm space at a high level. He says it's very weird. For whatever reason, our people are just socially conditioned to, they come to sites like where you work at The Blaze for news, and they just don't want to go to you for original content. And that's what he told me. It blew my mind. And I said, what about 10 years from now? What about maybe younger people? Will they be more conditioned? He goes, and he's a younger guy too. He's 10 years younger than me minimum. He's like, I don't see it. What do you think of that psychology? What do you think?
Well, I'm a big fan of utilizing the parts of the system that work and not the parts that don't work. So in our case, that means in making a movie on someone like Ronald Reagan, I get what could have happened if a studio was in charge of it, or if I had to answer to a studio. Trust me, you wouldn't want to watch that movie, and your fans would not want to watch that movie. But at the same time, so as long as, in our case, we make the movie, we make our movies, then we partner. So I partnered with Universal, I partnered with Showbiz, I partnered with Lionsgate, because nobody can beat what Universal does, for instance, around the world, or Lionsgate with home entertainment. And so we got a very, very low distribution fee. So, look, the system is what it is. And so I'm a fan of using the parts that work, and the parts that don't work are any kind of creative input or control, which there was none. We could make the movie. And by the way, just so your viewers know, or your listeners and viewers know, we also didn't have to answer to the Reagan Library or anybody really, because I wanted the viewers to know we were coming at the material honestly. We weren't trying to make Reagan look like Mr. Perfect. We were not to destroy him. We were completely independent. So that's what I find that works. And look, if there are a lot of good people working in Hollywood, of course, right now Warner Brothers is being taken over by Ellison. So I have great people at Lionsgate, at Universal. So there are good people in the system, and I'm just whenever possible, I don't like to retreat. I like to be a part of the parts that work.
Mark, how many closeted conservatives would you say really exist in Hollywood?
Well, during an election year, what I would tell your viewers and listeners is whoever endorses the Democratic nominee, you know where they are. Whoever's quiet may be on your side. That's just the nature of the way it is. So there are a lot of people that share your values in Hollywood that work quietly and get the job done. They may not wave a banner or wave a flag. But at the same time, I mean, I'm noticing some incredible things happening in the last few years, not necessarily a conservative, but from a Christian point of view. I mean, to turn on your computer and watch Russell Brand be excited about a Bible verse, like what in the world? That is, that's hilarious. I think God has a great sense of humor. But, people like Chris Pratt and so many others, Justin Bieber, so many others are really being very vocal about their faith in Hollywood recently.
You guys underwent a lot of social media censorship from the likes of Facebook with a movie called Reagan, from really an era where things were, hotly contested politically, but not as toxic or weaponized as they are at this moment. Were you guys surprised that they basically gave old Dutch, they gave him the MAGA Trumpian treatment when you guys rolled out this movie as well? Or are we just all going to get branded like this now?
It really was a shock because, as you said, we were right in the middle of an election, which that was not our plan, but that was what happened. But yeah, we were suspended twice by Facebook. Our account was suspended. We couldn't advertise for long periods of time. And, I can't get that time back. It's one thing. It's like running a 26-mile marathon and being sidelined for 25 minutes. It's like they can say, I'm sorry, but it doesn't change the fact that I lost that time.
Right.
And so that was
just
rough.
To quantify for our audience, Mark, pardon me, just to quantify how meaningful that is to a movie like yours. For people over the age of 45, Facebook is the number one aggregator of news and content in the United States of America, the number one way they access news and content. Well, who's going to be the market for a movie about President Ronald Reagan? People over the age of 45. That's your primary audience. So go ahead. Yes.
Well, yeah, and that's bad enough that they did it to us, but we would get word from our fans. Hey, I tried to share news about the film, and I was told I was spamming, and I was blocked. I mean, it was a consistent pattern, and Newsweek broke the story about what they were doing. So this was not like WorldNet Daily or somebody. This was a left-leaning publication that broke the story, had all the receipts, and showed what was done to us. And so, it's really a shame. We all deserve an equal playing field. Steve, they said that our movie might influence the election, that it was about a political figure. Well, he was a political figure 40 years ago, but he hasn't been. He's been dead for 20 years now. So it was really ridiculous, and it was never applied to other movies. The movie about President Obama, South Side by You, whatever it was called, that was never flagged like this. So, but look, we never had problems with X. We had no problems with Instagram, interestingly, owned by Meta. It was simply Facebook. But that was, as you said, that was our home base. Our fan base would have been Facebook.
Before we let you go, what is it that our audience needs to know about the movie making process in terms of getting better content with our ideology out there that they don't know, Mark?
Well, first of all, I joke in the book that if you have a friend who wants to get into filmmaking, give them this book and you can talk them out of it, because it's all about part of it is the difficulties of making a movie. But part of the book is also just trying to figure out who Ronald Reagan was. I spent time with about 50 of his aides and people that knew him and worked with him and got their stories in there. I spent time with 2 Supreme Court justices who knew him and really wanted to capture that. And as I said, I wanted it to not be the portrait of a perfect person. There was one guy I was talking to, and I said, "You've got to give me something human about him. What would make him angry?" He said, "Well, if we overscheduled him, he would have a little flash of temper, and he would throw his glasses on the table and say, 'Guys, I can't do all this in one day.'" So that's the kind of portrait we wanted to paint. But in terms of your question, everybody, if you're interested in film, come out, be a part of it. Take classes, go to college, learn the art of screenwriting. Really, our storytelling should be done by everybody, not just one political side. As a film goer, I want to hear from all points of view: center, right, left, everybody, Christian, secular, whatever. And so the more people that get involved, the more stories, the better we'll all be off.
Name of the book, Making Reagan, a memoir from the producer of the Reagan movie, Mark Joseph. Good to connect with you, brother. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet. Take care. I said this a lot as we were making Nefarious and after it came out. I think it's even more true now than it was even a couple of years ago. There is one sector of this culture, and only one right now, where mass persuasion is possible, where people will allow you to confront their worldview in ways they will not tolerate in virtually any other format. And that one mechanism is in storytelling. That's really the last one left. That's the last place where mass persuasion can take place. And it's very difficult, though. It's funny. A lot of the money people on our side are anxious to just give 100 or 200 million every election cycle over and over and over again to try to win a handful of races. And that money's not fungible. It's not replaceable. Once you've spent it, it's gone, right? And yet trying to get them to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million to make a film that might reach 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people, way more difficult sell. But they definitely want their candidates that they give all that money to bitch and moan about how left-wing Hollywood is. They definitely want their candidates to do that. Yes.
You know, Mark, I'd imagine, shares an affinity for at least one scene in a great movie, Amistad, where Anthony Hopkins, John Quincy Adams, is talking to Morgan Freeman's ex-slave character, and he's, "What's your story?" And Morgan Freeman is kind of in awe that he's sitting in front of an ex-president, first of all, and he just kind of starts mumbling out some kind of very vanilla, and the ex-president stops and he says, "No. What is your story?" That's what his Mark is talking about when he right away, Steve asked a question there, and Steve's good at asking theological questions. That wasn't even remotely explicitly theological, but Mark picked up on the Lord told stories. And then when he talks about the Old Testament and Nathan and David, the right is terrible at this, and we need to be better.
You know what would be really nice? We're going to be talking about this a little bit tomorrow on the Deace group. If Elon Musk understands the civilizational battle we're in, at least on some level, does he understand how the sausage is made of creating culture? Because if he understands that, this conversation could have a much different conclusion in the near future.
Amen. Theology Thursday's next. Stay tuned. Back here with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing the show. Steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, please leave us a 5-star review. If you're a podcast listener and love the show, we would appreciate that. Tens of thousands of you have done that for us, so thank you very much. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow to make sure that every time we do a new episode, it's for sure right there in your podcast feed. And lots of you have done that for us too, so thank you for each and every one of those. And this part of the show, Theology Thursday, we want to thank our friends at the Christian College Guide for sponsoring this part of the program. Listen, college can be a major investment, and you don't want to, just send your kid off to become a gay race communist. And then, can you really trust everybody calling themselves a Christian college and university to actually be one of those? That's where the Christian College Guide comes in. It's an online directory of over 250 Christian colleges and universities as a one-stop shop. It gives you all the basics, right? Acceptance rates, tuition costs, academic majors, etc. But what you're really looking for is spiritual formation. What are the campus's policies on faith, the spiritual life on campus and within the curriculum like? Right, that's the info you can't find anywhere else, and it's from people you can trust, and best of all, it's free. All right, it's the definitive guide to Christian higher education, and it's absolutely free. So if you or someone you know is considering college, go to ChristianCollegeGuide.com, ChristianCollegeGuide.com. You can create a free user profile and get started today at ChristianCollegeGuide.com. Again, that's ChristianCollegeGuide.com. Theology Thursday continues on. We're going to finish Romans chapter 11. And I think it is vitally important, maybe this chapter at this time within our national discourse. I think it is more important than ever before that we take this seriously and fully in context. It's been a couple of weeks since we last discussed where we left off with Romans chapter 11. So I'm going to make the executive decision. I'm going to have us actually go back to the beginning of this chapter and make sure we have everything in context before we get into the final third of this chapter and the scripture that we're going to focus our discussion on for the rest of this hour. These are the words of St. Paul to the church in Rome. Again, remember, this is the first truly diverse conclave of Christians in the history of the church. The first time that Jews and non-Jews or Gentiles are going to worship God, the God of the Bible, together with no separation. I ask then, Paul writes, has God rejected his people? By no means. Paul says, for I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Let me say this again. God has not rejected his people from whom he foreknew. Do you not know what the scripture says of Elijah, how he appeals to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets, they have demolished your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what is God's reply to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal, who was the chief demonic presence in the Holy Land in the Old Testament. So too at the present time, there is a remnant, chosen by grace, Paul writes. But if it's by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. What then? Israel failed to obtain what it was seeking. The elect obtained it, but the rest were hardened. As it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes that would not see, and ears that would not hear, down to this very day. And David says, let their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution for them. Let their eyes be darkened so that they cannot see, and bend their backs forever. So I ask then, did they stumble? Who's the they? The Jewish people. Did they stumble in order that they might fall? By no means, Paul says. Rather, it is through their trespass that salvation has now come to the Gentiles, so as to make Israel jealous. Now, if their trespass means riches for the world, and if their failure means riches for the Gentiles, how much more will their full inclusion mean? Now I am speaking to you Gentiles. Inasmuch then as I am an apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry, in order to somehow make my fellow Jews jealous, and thus save some of them. For if their rejection... Let me stop right there for a second. Here's the thing that's unique. It's not just there's going to be some Jews saved. It's some of everybody that will be saved. For many are called and few are chosen. There is a hell. It's not empty. In fact, it's well populated, unfortunately. Not to mention, you don't know who the remnant of Israel is. You don't know who the remnant of Jews are. You don't know. Not to mention, you're in the same covenant of grace. You didn't earn your salvation either. There's no point for you to have any pride whatsoever. To look down on those who are unsaved whatsoever. You did nothing to earn your salvation. As Paul says, if it was based on works, then it wouldn't be grace. It's a free gift of God, lest any man would boast, as Paul writes in another letter. So, it's just some who will be saved all throughout human existence. That's not just unique to Jews. Inasmuch then as I am an apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry in order to somehow make my fellow Jews jealous, that I may save some of them. For if their rejection means the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance mean but life from the dead? If the dough offered as first fruits is holy, so is the whole lump. And if the root is holy, so are the branches. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive root, were grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the other branches. Do not be arrogant toward the other branches. First of all, if you're grafted in, it wasn't originally, you weren't the original seed planted if you're grafted in. You weren't the original seed planted. So again, why are you arrogant? You know, it's funny, for Gentiles who look at unsaved Jews arrogantly, you know who you're an awful lot like? You ready? This one's going to sting. You ready for this one? Oh boy. You know who you're an awful lot like? Those very pesky Old Testament Jews.
Uh-oh.
That's who you're a lot like, as a matter of fact. You're more Jewish than you thought, bro. Where you start thinking God chose me, so I'm special, and instead start thinking, well, I'm special, so God chose me. This is the same mistake.
You and your Zionism, Steve.
Indeed, you're not aligned with Elijah. You're aligned with the Jews that Elijah is lamenting before the Lord, who killed the prophets and stoned those whom were sent. That's who you're aligned with. Why? Because this isn't a Jewish problem. It's a human problem. We're sinners. We're broken. We don't want the grace of God. And then when it's offered to us, we want it on our own terms. That's why we have to die daily. That's why we have to crucify our flesh. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing spot, meaning you weren't in there before. A spot had to open up for you. You weren't in there before. You weren't the original seed planted here. Do not be arrogant to the other branches. Do not be arrogant to the other branches. If you are, remember, it is not you who support the root, but the root who supports you. Where do our messianic prophecies come from that Jesus fulfilled? From the Jews. Where do the prophets themselves come from that we cite and quote today? From the Jews. Paul writes, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. Where did our Messiah come from? From the Jews. In other words, to go back to how Paul puts it today in this scripture, if you are, remember it is not you. Do not be arrogant towards the other branches. If you are, remember it is not you who support the root, but the root who supports you. Jesus didn't come from Belgium. From good Anglo-Saxon stock. No. Do not be arrogant towards the other branches. If you are, remember, it is not you who support the root, but the root that supports you. Then you will say, well, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. In other words, well, that's great, but they screwed up, so this is my spot now. So it belongs to me. It's mine. Mine. Because nothing says Christianity more than mine. Paul says, that is true. They were broken off because of their unbelief. But you would be wise to stand fast in your faith. So do not become proud, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches for their insolence, neither will he spare you. What was easier or harder to break off if you're the planter, the natural branches or the ones you grafted in? So do not become proud, but fear. So do not become proud, but fear. Some of these pastors online with these small churches playing to audiences of tens of thousands, to get their jollies and exposure and build their brands off of anti-Semitic tropes that the algorithms get their jollies off of and promote. They speak with arrogance, no fear of God, none. To them, Paul says, do not become proud, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. Note then the kindness and the severity of God. Severity towards those who have fallen. But God's kindness to you, provided you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you too will be cut off. Jesus echoes this sentiment in one of his letters in Revelation when he says to one of the churches, go back and do the former things you once did. Otherwise, I will come to you and I will take away your lampstand. We see this in denominations in America today. They're wholly given over to their depraved minds. They've been cut off. Jesus has taken their lampstand away. But here's the thing. Even they, if they do not continue in their unbelief, will be grafted in. Yeah, I'm going to look this up out of curiosity. How many Messianic Jews are there in the world? 1.5 million is the estimate. You know what? I didn't tell you guys I was going to do this. And 2 minutes ago, I didn't know I was going to do this. Let's keep. I like this game. Should we keep playing?
Sure.
Okay. At its height, what was the population of Old Testament Israel? Let's see. You want to have your mind blown? You know what ChatGPT just told me the answer to both those questions was? You want to have your mind blown, like right here, right now? Because my mind just got blown doing this. I had no idea I was going to do this. What do you think the answer is? At the height of Israel's power, after David had united all 12 tribes, estimates are, just looking at archaeological excavations, their scope, etc., at its peak, ancient Israel's population was about 1.5 million. How many Messianic Jews exist in the world today? About 1.5 million. That'll preach as I bring you back to these again. And even if they who had been cut off, who's the they? I'm adding that part. The ones that had been cut off. That's who the they is. Or the they are. Even if they who had been cut off, if they do not continue in their unbelief, they will be grafted back in. There's about as many Messianic Jews in the world today as there were ancient Israelites at the pinnacle of that Old Testament population. That's an example of what I'm talking about. And I don't know. I'm guessing. I don't know this for sure. All right? But I'm guessing a lot of those 1.5 million Jews who rejected their unbelief in their Messiah didn't do so because they really loved your sneering anti-Semitic tropes on your X account. Just going to throw that out there. I'm going to guess the amount of Jews who abandoned their unbelief in their Messiah this week because we decided to play footsie with Fuentes. I'm going to guess. Just going to throw this out there. I don't know, but I'm going to guess, if you are a national Messianic Jewish leader in this audience, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe you received a flood of new inquiries from your fellow Jews about this whole Jesus thing, because they just found Nick Fuentes to be really just that compelling of a figure. Thoughts? Probably not. No. Probably not.
No.
So even if they cut off because of their unbelief, if they do not continue in their unbelief, Paul says, they will be grafted back in. And today there's 1.5 million Messianic Jews grafted back in. For God has the power to graft them back in again. For if you were cut from what is by nature a wild olive tree and grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? It was their tree. So if God can take you, you greasy, uncircumcised, unenlightened pagan, Gentile, who did not know the law, did not know the oracles of God, the prophets were not sent to. And if God, by his grace, can graft you in, what can he do with those who the covenant was originally for when they discontinue their unbelief and return? What you're going to find when you read this book, if you read it, number one, it'll read you. Never forget that. It'll read you. Number two, you'll end up with zero excuses to be an anti-Semitic douchebag. Zero. Pardon me. In fact, all the reasons that you would become an anti-Semitic douchebag, as I said a few minutes ago, you're actually emulating the behavior of the very Jews that you want to condemn. The very Jews Elijah is lamenting, who have turned on him and turned on God and turned to Baal. You're more Jewish than you thought. Congrats. You're like that, who is the blacktivist who did that genealogy show a few years ago and found out that her ancestors were...
Which one?
Well, yeah, there were several, but found out they were, it was Angela...
Davis?
Davis, yeah. Found out that she was descended from slave owners. Blew her mind. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, pardon me again, if you are an anti-Semitic douchebag, you're pretty Jewish. There's a lot of similar behavior from the Jews towards their prophets, towards their Messiah. You're more Jewish than you thought. Congrats. Wear it proud. In fact, if anybody ought to be doing, Shabbots and Stars of David, it ought to be you guys. You guys ought to be doing it the most. You take on a lot of the characteristics of that which you claim to condemn. And now that brings us to the final third that we'll discuss here today. Because of everything that's happening right now on our side, I think it's just I think we should be more precise about taking everything in context than we ever have been, even up until this point. Now, Paul is going to get into the mystery of Israel's salvation now. Starts with Israel's rejection of Christ and what it means now in light of the ascension of the church. He then talks about the fact who are Jews and who are Gentiles and who is the covenant for. It's a covenant based on grace. It's not based on your ethnicity. It's not based on any of the identities that we care about today. It's based on grace. If you reject that grace, you'll be cut off. If you accept that grace, you'll be grafted in. It's just that simple. Jew and Gentile alike. You want to be an anti-Semitic douchebag, you'll be cut off. You want to give that up, you'll be grafted back in. You want to reject your Messiah, you'll be cut off. You want to accept your Messiah, you'll be grafted back in. It's grace for the Jew and the Gentile alike, which is why Paul is introducing this concept to the first congregation that was Jew and Gentile alike. It's grace for the Jew and the Gentile alike. Now, lest you be wise, Paul finishes in this chapter, lest you be wise in your own sight. I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers, a partial hardening. I believe, what, Aaron, can you look up the word partial in the original Greek for me? Can you do that?
Yeah, it means fully.
It means fully?
Yeah.
It means just completely condemned forever. Is that what it means?
All fully, 100%.
Okay. That's what I thought it meant too. At least that's what it means according to the algorithm on X. That's what it means, apparently. But a partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved, as it is written. The deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob. And this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As regards the gospel, they are enemies of the gospel now for your sake. But as regards election, they are beloved for the sake of their forefathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For just as you were at one time disobedient to God, but have now received mercy because of their disobedience, so they too have now been disobedient in order that by the mercy shown to you, they also may now receive mercy, Jew and Gentile alike. For God has consigned all to disobedience that he may have mercy on all. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways, Paul writes. For who has shown the mind of the Lord, who has been his counselor, who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forevermore. Amen. The same standard exists for everybody. The cross is for everybody, Jew and Gentile alike. You will receive the grace or reject the grace, Jew and Gentile alike. If you give up on if you persist in denying God's grace, you will be cut off, Jew and Gentile alike. If you cease in your unbelief and return to the covenant of grace, you will be grafted back in, Jew and Gentile alike. All have been consigned to disobedience, Jew and Gentile alike. All are in need of mercy, Jew and Gentile alike. You did nothing to earn your election. You are unworthy of your election. There is nothing about you that God needs, which is why he elected you. You're not a snowflake. There's not some unique purpose that God just could not pull off if you were not here. You're not that special. Except for one simple fact. Christ elected you. Jew and Gentile alike. That's it. There's no boasting. There's no scorecard. Persevere in your faith and you will be saved. Reject it and you won't. Come back after rejecting it and you will be saved. Provided you persevere from there. That's it. It's not any more complicated than that. It's not any more complicated than that. There will be a remnant of Israel saved. There'll be a remnant of Zimbabweans saved. There'll be a remnant of Americans saved. There'll be a remnant of Scottish saved. A remnant of Nigerians saved. A remnant of Madagascarans saved. A remnant of Russians saved. A remnant of Ukrainians saved. And then, those of you who rejected God's grace, you are more than welcome. You can spend, that is if they allow you to speak, you can spend all of eternity in hell hashing out your ethno identities and advantages that God gave not one rip about. Accept the grace of Christ, Jew and Gentile alike, you will be saved. Reject it, you won't. Walk away from it, you won't. Come back to it, you will. Jew and Gentile alike. There's a reason why we say the devil is in the details. This cannot be any plainer, any simpler. So those who come to you and want to make it complicated, either they're dumb or they're hoping you are. Whether you take the fullness of the Gentiles to mean and the remnant of Israel that will be saved is a literal nation of Israel, or whether you think it is the Jewish people, whatever your belief about that is, Paul makes it very clear. And that's a debatable point. And that has been debated for centuries within the New Testament and the church, and my guess is it won't be settled until Christ returns. And the manner in which he does or does not will finally settle the argument. What is inarguable, though, is you are not permitted to be an anti-Semitic douchebag. And in fact, expositing such traits is more likely evidence that you're not a Christian than you are. It is actually the same attitude many Jews had towards their prophets and their Messiah. You're more Jewish than you think. Congratulations.
It's like there's nothing new under the sun, Steve.
There is nothing new under the sun. Just new people under the sun who haven't heard it yet. And what you're going to find, really, throughout much of the scriptures is you really don't have an excuse to be a douchebag, period, towards Jews, Gentiles, pretty much anybody. You have no standing. You did not go to the cross. You did not endure the cross. You didn't suffer for your sins. He suffered for you. You didn't die amongst the most excruciating deaths, where we get the term excruciating from crucifixion, by the way, in our language. It's literally the inspiration for the word in our language. You didn't suffer that. You didn't endure that. He did. You have no standing. None. None. And a true Christian knows this and praises Christ for it. Because a true Christian understands, therefore by the grace of God go I. That could have been me. It deserved to be me. If the acknowledgement of grace makes you arrogant, you should seriously consider you're on the wrong end of it. I've had my say. We're going to turn it over to Todd and Aaron when we come back here in just a few moments. And you guys are welcome to respond to anything I brought up, or you've got your respected Bible study buddies there, and Dr. Scott Hahn and Dr. R.C. Sproul, but the floor will belong to the two of you when we return. More in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at SelectQuote. For over 40 years, SelectQuote has been one of the most trusted brokers in insurance, helping more than 2 million Americans secure over $700 billion with a B, $700 billion in coverage. That's Warren Buffett kind of money right there. Their mission is simple: to find you the right insurance policy for your unique needs, and they shop so you can save. Unlike other one-size-fits-all life insurance companies, SelectQuote's licensed agents, they work for you. And in as little as 15 minutes, they'll compare policies from top-rated carriers to find you the best fit for your health and your budget. And they work for you for free. There's no medical exam, no problem. They partner with providers offering same-day coverage up to $2 million without needing to visit a doctor. You got high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease. SelectQuote has partners with policies designed for many of those kinds of pre-existing conditions. So get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at selectquote.com/Steve. Again, that's selectquote.com/Steve. All right, gentlemen, I'll let you guys rock, paper, scissors who takes the conversation from here, but the floor is now yours.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, I hope Scott Hahn has a chance to hear what you just said, because as far as I can tell, he won't disagree with a word of it. Let's test that. First of all, I want to read two passages because they dovetail with 2 points you made. First of all, Paul does not advocate a theology of replacement in which Gentile believers take the place of a disinherited Israel as the new people of God. If that were the case, we would expect him to portray God abandoning his cultivated tree and domesticating a wild one instead. Mm-hmm. But this is not how the analogy...
That's very good. That's very good.
This is not how
That's
the
very
analogy
good.
depicts God's relationship with Israel and the Gentiles. Paul advocates a theology of incorporation. I know it's been said before in our conversation that the Catholics come more closely aligned with Reformed thinking on this, but strictly speaking, Catholics do not believe in replacement theology. And it has everything to do with what Steve accurately elaborated about the olive tree analogy. Secondly, regarding that the passage, the deliverer will come out of Zion, he will turn away from godlessness from Jacob, and this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. That's a passage from Isaiah. Scott Hahn says, I would contend that Paul interprets these passages from Isaiah in reference to the first coming of Christ rather than his second coming. It is in the church's proclamation of the gospel that Israel is to find its salvation. This needs to be said since Romans 11:26-27 is frequently considered a prophecy of the return of Christ in glory on the last day. Now it is reasonable to expect that the Lord's second coming will bring the process of Israel's salvation to its triumphant completion, but we should not conclude from this that it does not get underway until then. Paul is focused throughout Romans 11 on salvation coming to Israel in the present, not simply in the future. Paul's reasoning is based on the logic of the covenant. In the biblical view, covenants create families by establishing bonds of kinship that endure through time. This means that a covenant can never be broken, only enforced. Faithful partners joined in covenant can expect to enjoy its blessings, while an unfaithful partner faces the prospect of its curses. Paul can thus describe Israel from two different vantage points. Because God's love for Israel endures, the covenant with Israel endures. But because the covenant with Israel has been renewed through the Messiah, and many have refused to be part of it, the disciplinary sanctions of the covenant are put into effect. So it is that unbelieving Israel is hardened and beloved at the very same time. Paul draws together these main threads of his theological exposition here. What he says...
Can I inject something just based right there?
Let me just finish because it's only
ahead.
a couple sentences, and then I think this summarizes it. What he's saying here constitutes a summary not only of Romans 9 through 11, but everything covered in Romans 1 through 11. Distilled to its essence, the story of the world's salvation is a story of human disobedience overcome by divine mercy. It is the story of the covenant people, they, no less than the Gentiles, you.
I mean, that's brilliant. That might be. And he's a smart guy, so it's a high bar. That might be the best exegetical summary from Hahn you have shared yet.
Well, and we talk about providential timing all the time. That's what I was going to read, no matter what you said. And what you said, again, find one jot or one tittle that disagrees with that. It doesn't.
Now, the part there towards the end where he talked about God being simultaneously mad and simultaneously merciful. Can you read that part again? Can you read that part there again towards the end?
Because the covenant with Israel has been renewed through the Messiah, and many have refused to be a part of it, the disciplinary sanctions of the covenant are put into effect. So it is that unbelieving Israel is hardened and beloved at the very same time.
All right. Here's the thing: we struggle with paradox, and particularly in the current era of Western thought, where we lack critical thinking skills. But if you do not understand paradox, you are not going to get Christianity. You can even be a Christian. You really won't understand much of your own religion.
You spoke about this very effectively recently with Eric's taxes.
Yeah, you're going to just struggle with this. So let me try to put this in very plain language. I think it won't be a perfect analogy, but it's the closest I can come up with to make what Hahn just said there come to life. You have a family with multiple children. The oldest child was meant to take over the family business. Went renegade on you. In good conscience, you just cannot give that son the keys to the kingdom. There's too much at stake. He's demonstrated he does not have a current interest whatsoever in carrying the banner and becoming what you meant for him to be. He is still your son. You still love your son. But you have cut him off. from what was intended to be his legacy. And instead, you grafted in one of the other children you did not anticipate. Well, that would make it sound like God didn't know the future, but wasn't necessarily meant to take this spot. You graft them in his place instead. Now, you can't come up with a perfect analogy because this is beyond our way of reasoning and thinking. We can't do this. We're not God. They once asked Billy Graham to sum up the Bible. His answer: Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. God is God and I am not. Pretty good summary. Pretty good summary. So the idea, there's never been a time with your own children where you took things away, maybe even access to a birthright away, but did you stop loving your children? If your children returned to their birthright, would you not bring them back? That's the story. By the way, what's the most popular parable of all of Jesus' stories? What's the most popular one? The prodigal son. That was excellent. All right, before we go to Aaron, in these unprecedented times, make sure you've got a real estate agent that's the kind that you'll be recommending to the people you care about for years to come. Where would you find them? Get started today at realestateagentsitrust.com. And there we're going to set you up with an agent whose track record of success has been verified. Otherwise, we wouldn't make them available to you. And a lot of times they'll be from right here in this Blaze audience as well. So again, you want the kind of agent you'll be raving about and recommending to the people you care about for years to come. You'll find them at realestateagentsitrust.com, whether you're trying to get across town, across the state, across the country. Realestateagentsitrust.com is where you're going to find an agent to navigate you through what can be a stressful process even when we're not in unprecedented times. Realestateagentsitrust.com. Aaron?
So I'll read a few snapshots and excerpts of R.C. Sproul's exposition on the predicate of this passage. He writes, a war took place in 1967 that lasted only a few days, but it culminated in the Jewish or Israeli troops coming into the old city of Jerusalem. Television gave us images of soldiers arriving at the Wailing Wall, the portion of the temple still standing. Even though firefights were going on, the soldiers threw down their weapons and rushed to the Wailing Wall and began to pray. It was an astonishing moment in the history of civilization. Many serious scholars then and now believe the return of the Jews to the Holy Land has absolutely no redemptive historical significance, nor do they believe it of the 1948 Balfour Declaration. Others believe what happened in 1948 and again in 1967 has everything to do with redemptive history, so much so that they keep a constant eye out for the rebuilding of the temple and the reinstitution of the sacrificial system in Jerusalem as harbingers of the ultimate or imminent return of Jesus. I don't think there has ever been a period of church history in which more frenzied attention has been focused on the expected return of Jesus. This intense focus, which we witnessed over the past few decades, is largely due to those events in Israel and Jerusalem. I remember that day in 1967, Sproul says. I watched the proceedings on television from my home in Massachusetts, and I got in my car and drove to the house of a friend, now one of the most distinguished Old Testament scholars in the world. They had never been or never believed that such events had redemptive historical significance. But when I went to see him that day, he was not so sure. Even someone steeped in biblical knowledge was struck by the sensational events unfolding at that time. Sproul writes, the question before us is whether there is a future for ethnic Israel. Is God going to work again in history with the people who are Jewish, ketasarka, according to the flesh? Thus far in Romans 11, Paul has addressed his concerns for his kinsman, Israel. In the course of redemptive history, the fall of ethnic Jews has led to our being incorporated into the family of God as a wild olive branch grafted into the root. If the fall of the Jewish people redounded to the blessedness of the nations, how much more will their restoration? That is why we have to pay close attention to what it says here. Then R.C. Sproul goes through several pertinent words and phrases here. What does until mean? What does fullness mean? What does the end of the age mean? And he gives great defenses for all of those things. But he continues on In AD 70, the temple was destroyed and sacrifices ceased, and for all intents and purposes, the Jewish nation was scattered throughout the world. The Jews' identity with Jerusalem was broken, except for their wistful hope and oath that sometime they may be restored to it. Before AD 70, most people saw the Christian church as a subdivision of Judaism, but that stopped in AD 70 when the judgment of God came with a vengeance on Israel. Her temple was removed block by block, and her holy city was devastated and given over to the control of Gentiles, but not forever, according to Luke 21 and Romans 11. There is a future for ethnic Israel in the city of Jerusalem. Sproul goes through another set. What does generation mean? In the Olivet Discourse, there's apocalyptic language, and there's also simple language that's used. But here's the conclusion of verses 25 and 26, which is the pertinent to Sproul's writing here, to the topic at hand. Sproul says, I do not hold the view of the preterists. They say all the prophecies about the return of Jesus and the fulfillment of the kingdom of God took place in AD 70. I don't believe that for a minute. I think something of dramatic significance took place in AD 70, the end of the Jewish age as they knew it. It was the end of the temple and Jerusalem, but not the end of God's economy of redemption for his people. I believe Paul is saying here, and throughout Romans 11, that God is not finished with the Jews. I've been concerned since 1967. It may be the economy of redemption that God is going to bring Gentiles into his house for another 5,000 years. But when I see what is happening in Jerusalem, I don't think so. We may be on the very cusp of that last roundup of Gentiles. We may be very close to the next step of redemptive history, God's work with ethnic Israel. No time since AD 70 has seen such a concentration of evangelism to ethnic Jews as that taking place in our day, nor has any time in church history mirrored the vast number of converts to Christianity from Judaism. I do not believe that God has two agendas, one for the Jew and one for the Gentiles. He has one agenda that incorporates both the Jew and the Gentile in his kingdom. So there is R.C. Sproul's exposition on verses 25 and 26, which are, in his words, or at least in his writings, kind of mostly to do with the topic at hand of the day.
I missed it, Aaron. Because because it was Dr. Sproul, it was very smart and very wordy. Can you go back in there, because I missed that part where he said, and also make sure to take time out to be an absolutely belittling anti-Semitic a-hole on social media as often as you possibly can. But that I missed that. Can you just repeat all that so I want to jot that down?
Yeah, I missed that as well, unfortunately. Oh, here it is right here. What's wrong with you people? Also an R.C. Sproul quote.
That is actually an R.C. Sproul quote, as a matter of fact. Here's the bottom line of all this. And to be fair to the people with the Reform view, most of them do not. The replacement theology is kind of a pejorative that, frankly, dispensationalists put on them in many cases. They more or less think that the church is the incorporated fulfillment of Israel's mission more than a replacement. But that's a nuance that we can all. I look forward to the day when we don't have an anti-Semitic darkness hovering over our clan, so we can go back to ripping each other's throats out over these sorts of theological treatises again. I long for that day. I'm hoping it's just around the corner, because I love ripping people's throats out for theological nuance. I like having my own throat ripped out for it. In fact, so I long for the day when we will have the benefit of such navel gazing. But currently, there we have a mothership of darkness hovering over us. And we have social media algorithms. We all can experience it. At this point, short of just doing OnlyFans porn, the quickest way to grow your engagement in the social media world is to wink, nod, passively, actively endorse anti-Semitic tropes or make it look like you are diminishing their true influence. That's the quickest way to do it. I don't know why. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly before. We toyed with the idea of an after-credit scene with Nefarious. We had budget overruns when our directors got, sick with COVID. We weren't sure they were going to make it. We didn't even get the movie made, so we never got to it. But we toyed with the idea of an after credit scene because we were writing the story right at the advent of social media, mass social media censorship. Okay. And we toyed with the idea of an after credit scene of a mass AI data center out in the middle of nowhere. And essentially it is minions just canceling people, determining what gets promoted. Okay. And you see from behind Nefarious is presiding over it all. He basically controls the Overton window of everything we get to see here or not, right? But this hovering darkness we have to address it. It's wrong. It has no basis in fact or reality. And the scriptures clearly condemn it. It doesn't matter what you think of the nation of Israel, this nation of Israel, whether there will be another nation of Israel. You cannot be an anti-Semitic douchebag. Go hard. Romans 8:28.